if you want to go to another level, typically to go up, you've got to give up something, right? Because we all have 24 hours in a day. If you're like, I don't have any more time, then what can we eliminate from that calendar so that we can add something else to that calendar?
Good,
and for me, it was like, if I give up this movie, or if I give up this being at the dinner, because people are like, listen, I don't answer my phone when I'm at the restaurant, or if I'm at dinner, that is my time when I'm with my family. And there were times where I had to communicate and say, hey, look, there may be some calls that come through that I have to pick up during this time. But you were okay with that, and I was okay with that. That's what I'm saying. For somebody else, they're like, I would never do that.
But also, you did it in seasons. You don't do it forever.
No.
It's a season that you go through, and you say, okay, we're going to give it 1 year. We're going to give it 2 years.
Right.
That's such a small amount of time.
I know.
In the big picture, when you really look at it.
I know for me, there were times where I'm like, oh, I'm messing this up. I felt guilty. Not that the kids made me feel guilty, not that you made me feel guilty, not that my mom made me feel guilty, but I personally felt guilty because I compared myself to others who weren't giving up the same thing. But then I had to also appreciate what was my level of elevation compared to theirs.
Right.
If you're a go-getter, faith-driven, and family-focused, and need to break through to your next level, this is the podcast for you. Your self-talk can reshape every area of your life. It's time to dream and think big. Welcome to the Self-Talk Experience with Darnell and Tracy Self. It's time to elevate, baby. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the Self-Talk Experience, everybody's favorite podcast, the Self-Talk. Hi, babe.
Hey, welcome to the Self-Talk Experience. It's good to be back. We've been traveling a lot lately, guys, but it's always good to be back home. No place like home.
No place like wherever you are is where I want to be.
Well, it's been a little cold here, so I think it's been better when we've
been traveling
and getting some sun in there, some vitamin
absolutely.
D. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So listen, for those who've just joined and started listening, I should say, to our podcast, want to say thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the shares. Thank you for all the likes. And we really appreciate it if we don't say it enough. And lately we've been traveling, and folks have actually been saying so many wonderful things about the podcast and sharing what they've been getting out of the podcast in LA and in Houston and in Memphis.
In Florida. We love it. We love it.
It's been
really,
great.
really appreciate it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And because sometimes it's good to hear what you're getting out of it so that we know what we should be focused on even more when we think about our episodes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you guys. So as we've been, talking about our goals here this year in 2024, for those who watched it live. So 2024 is February 2024. And we've been talking about goal setting a lot and adjusting goals and taking a look at your goals and seeing if you need to make an adjustment in terms of commitment to them, in terms of the time that we're putting into them, in terms of either decreasing what the end goal looks like for right now. If we feel like, I bit off a little bit more than I could chew in terms of making my goal feel realistic.
Yeah. And also, babe, we talked about feeling comfortable with letting some of it go and getting a new goal.
Yeah.
If it's not serving where you need to be at this time.
Exactly right.
And it's okay that you do it because you're not quitting.
Right.
It doesn't make you a failure at all.
Yep. And I think that's a big thing that people deal with. I know that most of us deal with that. We feel like, man, I don't want to feel like a quitter. Right. And sometimes it's not about starting over. It's about starting again. Right. And we often talk about that.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Not starting over, starting again.
Yeah. Starting over makes it seem like you're starting from the very beginning. But starting again is just starting from wherever you left off, but in a different lane.
And with a different perspective.
That's exactly right.
And actually better because you've learned from wherever you were in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right?
Let's just say that you're headed to a destination. You're halfway there. You realize, I need a second to figure out if I even want to go there anymore.
Oh, if you're lost, you just go home.
That's not what I was saying.
Sorry. I thought you were talking directly to me.
Yeah, this one. We all know, listen, guys, Tracy Self has been the person, but it's not as much anymore where if any little thing doesn't go according to plan.
Yeah, I know, but getting lost, I don't like being lost.
Okay, but here's the thing about being lost.
Yes.
Instead of going all the way back home, if you take a second, make an adjustment, make a call, right? Get some directions from someone who knows where to go. we can actually still get there sooner rather than going back home and still having to go there another day.
Or you can stop and get coffee.
Okay. All I'm saying is, guys, you're starting again. So you pull over for a second, make an adjustment, start again, even if it's in a different lane, right? You start again. And so, but you start again wiser. You start again, you learn something,
Yeah,
right?
good.
And that's what I'm saying. So sometimes I know for myself when I felt like, man, you know what? I'm not really starting over because I'm actually better than I was when I first started.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm starting over, it's like I didn't learn anything and I'm not wiser.
Right.
And you know what I mean? So I failed forward. So I'm not really starting over because I fell forward. I'm my body length closer to my goal.
That's a great way to
right?
look at
Yeah.
it. It's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. So listen, guys, today we're not really talking about that as much as we are depending on your level of elevation, your desired elevation.
Okay.
Will determine how much elimination you're going to have to consider from your life.
But it depends on where you're starting from too, right?
Yeah,
Right.
no doubt. But here's what I'm saying. Sometimes, we say things like, you should be watching TV and you should be, sell your car if you have to, right? No, seriously, right? And depending on what you want, maybe that's true. Maybe you shouldn't be watching TV and maybe your car doesn't really matter as much if you need that money to invest in the business.
But everybody has different goals and everybody
That's
has a
my
different
point.
place that they would like to be.
Yep.
Right?
And that's my point, right? Depending on the level of elevation.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean? Like when I first started dreaming about making $1 million,
Mm-hmm.
that was an elevation that was so far higher than where we currently were.
Yes.
So because of that, I thought, man, I'm going to have to really do something drastic and give up some things that I ordinarily wouldn't give up to get there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How come you were okay with that? Because there were times, guys, and it wasn't all the time, but I remember 2 times where I walked out of a movie theater. And I walked out of a movie theater because a call came in and I knew this call could make the difference in our business.
Right.
And I was like, hey, I'm going to have to take this call.
Well, because we started from the beginning when we started figuring out where we wanted to be in life and what our goals were.
Right.
We had that conversation early on about what do you want most and what do you want now?
Yeah.
So we had that conversation.
Yeah.
So when you did have to step away from the family or weren't able to go with us at all, I had to keep reminding myself, okay, it's what I want most. It's what I want most. And he's walking away because that's what he's working on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that's so I know.
But we were aligned because we had the same goals.
Mm.
So it becomes difficult when you don't have the same goals as a person that you're with.
Yeah.
Are you talking about like couples? Because I mean, if a couple doesn't have the same goals, then they have to figure out some kind of compromise or middle ground because that's tough.
Right.
If somebody wants something and somebody else wants something else.
Right.
Right.
So I think it's exactly what you just said, right? Listen, guys, if what you want most starts to occupy your mind more than what you want now, then it's easier. I found it's been my observation and experience that it's been easier to give up the things that are now. So the movie wasn't what I wanted most. What I wanted most was to put us in a financial situation where we didn't have to worry about money anymore. Didn't have to worry about just paying the bills anymore.
Right.
And if that meant missing out on a movie time, then I was okay with that because what I wanted most was more important than what we were doing now, which was the movie.
Right. But I also had the belief that if you walked out, it would be worth it.
Right.
It might not be worth it now.
Right.
And I might have an attitude tonight when it's happening.
Yeah.
But I had to just paint that picture for my future.
Yeah.
And say, if he walks out now, what does that look like in 5 years? What does that look like in 10 years? Right.
Yeah.
But we were painting that picture together. Right.
Yeah. I think, and this is what I'm saying. So I don't want anyone to ever feel like what they're doing is wrong because they're not willing to do the same thing. I guess is what I'm really trying to get to.
Yeah.
Because if you're not careful, you'll talk to somebody and they were like, hey man, really you shouldn't be watching a football game. Really and depending on the level of elevation and the speed in which you want to hit it, you may not have to give up the same things.
Very true.
You know what I mean? And so I'm not even asking folks to walk out of a movie. I'm not even asking folks I mean, that would be insensitive of me to say, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, because everyone's different and their family dynamics are different. Like you said,
Absolutely.
them and the relationship that they have with someone who is their support system may be different. And that person may say, look, honestly, I don't even want all of that.
Well, so then my question to you is, what do you do when it's like that? What if my goals are just to travel domestically, but your goals are to travel internationally?
Right.
So how can I support you if that's not what I want anyway?
Right.
I'm okay with what I want, but you want something different.
Yeah.
How do you have a relationship like that?
Right. And it's tough because
It's not really, is there an answer to that? I don't know.
I wouldn't be able to give that answer because there are too many variables there.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? And so when you look at that, there's some compromise there. And the compromise is, hey, look, I would like for us to be able to do this. And if that person says, I really don't want to travel, then it's kind of like, are we evenly yoked? And it's just, that's a little bit more challenging. That's why I said I'm not equipped to give that type of advice. But what I would say, because this particular episode, what I really wanted to make sure that the thing I really want folks to get from this episode is that be careful having anyone else tell you that what you're doing is wrong for what you want for your family in your future.
You have to be confident in what you want. So you can kind of put the blinders on and not worry about what people say.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we have mentorship, you have coaches. So you're going to have folks that give you insight on what they found to be effective in terms of going for a particular goal. But at the same time, they may not know your family dynamics.
Right.
So they may say, hey, listen, just if you have to go on that trip without your spouse, but they don't realize the dynamics are a little different in that relationship.
Sure.
And you know what I mean? There's some trust that has to be built up. There's some other things that may be happening.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, look, guys, if you want to go to another level, typically to go up, you've got to give up something, right? Because we all have 24 hours in a day. If you're like, I don't have any more time, then what can we eliminate from that calendar so that we can add something else to that calendar?
That's good,
and for me, it was like, if I give up this movie, or if I give up this being at the dinner, because people are like, listen, I don't answer my phone when I'm at the restaurant, or if I'm at dinner, that is my time when I'm with my family. And there were times where I had to communicate and say, hey, look, there may be some calls that come through that I have to pick up during this time. But you were okay with that, and I was okay with that. That's what I'm saying. For somebody else, they're like, I would never do that.
But also, you did it in seasons. You don't do it forever.
No.
It's a season that you go through, and you say, okay, we're going to give it 1 year. We're going to give it 2 years.
Right.
That's such a small amount of time.
I know.
In the big picture, when you really look at it.
I know.
Right?
Right. Or if you're like, hey, look, for the next 90 days, let's set this goal. And for 90 days, these are the things this is what it's going to look like. And again, this comes in communication. Yeah.
It's the communication.
Yeah.
We're saying the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just, listen, guys, I know for me, there were times where I'm like, oh, I'm messing this up. I felt guilty. Not that the kids made me feel guilty, not that you made me feel guilty, not that my mom made me feel guilty, but I personally felt guilty because I compared myself to others who weren't giving up the same thing. But then I had to also appreciate what was my level of elevation compared to theirs.
Right.
And some of the places I wanted to go, not everybody wanted to go, and the direction that I was headed in, not everybody was headed in that same season. And this is why I'm saying that we have to make sure that we make a decision what we want and what we're willing to give up, not what someone else wants and not what someone else is willing to give up.
But you say that all the time too, babe. You say the people that said, I can't believe you're quitting your job at the mall all that time ago, they're still at the mall.
Yeah.
Because that was their cap. That's what they could see.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go by that.
Yeah. I used to say, if you buy people's opinions, you have to also be willing to buy their lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right. And so some of the folks who at that time were like, man, that would never work, were still working at the mall. And if I had bought their opinions, perhaps I'd have bought their lifestyle. And that wasn't a wrong thing.
No.
They didn't see this happening for me because they didn't see it happening for themselves.
Yeah.
Right. So they haven't given themselves permission to succeed. So they thought that it wasn't possible to succeed at that level only because they haven't given themselves permission to succeed at that level.
That's right.
So listen, guys, so you know exactly what you want. And if not, set the goal, make a decision that this is what I want, and then decide what am I willing to give up so I can go up to that level. And then make a decision that I'm going to do what's important for me and my family based on the communication and not what someone else is doing for them and their family, because they may want something completely different, and what they may be willing to give up, you may not be willing to give up.
Not
and
the
that's
same.
you got to be okay with that.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, guys, listen, we've had an opportunity to watch a lot of people grow businesses, and not all of them have given up the same exact thing. Some folks have given up holidays and birthdays, and some folks have refused to give up holidays and birthdays. You've got to make a decision, again, what's best for you, and know that if you feel good about that decision, then you'll probably do more for that decision.
That's good, babe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this has been another episode of the Self-Talk Experience. Remember, the things we say to ourselves about ourselves eventually will determine what we have for ourselves.
And if you get lost, don't call me.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Talk Podcast with Darnell and Tracy Self. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. And we'll see you next time. And remember, talk good to yourself.